Traditional business teaches that margins and efficiency is everything. As an owner, your success depends on optimizing costs and driving as much output with as few inputs as possible. Silicon Valley, on the other hand, preaches that speed and product is everything. As a tech company, your goal is to create markets and to be the first mover. All the millions that you burn to accelerate growth is justified as long as you end up owning the market. In the 2010s, there was one startup who possessed all of these ingredients, and by the measures of Silicon Valley and Wall Street, seemed destined to be the next big billion-dollar consumer brand. That company was GoPro. Digital cameras were once a ferocious, fast-growing market where companies like Sony, Nikon, Canon, and Fuji were locked in an endless war. The same market was reduced to scraps in the late 2000s as a smartphone became an adequate replacement for capturing everyday photos and videos. The average consumer no longer needed dedicated $300 DSLRs. The camera market entered into steep decline until the early 2010s with the emergence of GoPro. GoPro took the world by storm with its game-changing cameras. With radically compact design, tiny form factor, high portability, rugged waterproof exteriors, and reasonable picture quality, GoPro cameras were able to capture never-before-seen action and perspectives. GoPros were tough and flexible enough to survive being shot into space, submerged in the ocean, lowered into volcanoes, carried to Mount Everest, and mounted on animals, humans, and vehicles. With GoPro, viewers could now capture up-close, adrenaline-inducing animal encounters, hidden landscapes, daredevil stunts, physical feats, and all other sorts of adventures. From a content standpoint, the videos that users generated with their GoPros were revolutionary and regularly went viral through the 2010s. GoPro videos were also distinct. After you watched a few, you could easily recognize GoPro footage by its trademark fisheye, POV, ultra-wide lens. GoPro was category-leading and category-defining. The company had effectively created and owned an entire category of cameras. It was the pioneer, the golden standard, and the household name, as GoPro was not just the name of the product and company, but also became the unofficial label for any small, portable, action camera on the market. In 2014, GoPro IPO'd with solid fundamentals, boasting over $1 billion in sales and selling millions of units every year in a market where every other camera manufacturer had stagnated. There were still lingering concerns on just how far the business could go on a single product and how big the action camera market would really be. Yet GoPro had to be successful. By the measures of Silicon Valley, the company had single-handedly created and owned the market. By the measures of Wall Street, GoPro boasted decent margins, years of profits, and strong growth without all the artificial subsidies and massive losses that are typical for tech startups. Even if GoPro did hit the ceiling on the action camera market, the prevailing belief was that the company still enjoyed such strong branding and fundamentals that it could always branch out and remain a successful modern consumer electronics brand. Yet fast forward to present day, now in 2023, and less than a decade later, GoPro's stock has dropped 95%. Even during the greatest bull market in history, a single share of GoPro's stock then was worth less than an order of McDonald's French fries. Saturation is the obvious root cause, as like with any new market, action cameras naturally became commoditized over time. But even if we do know the root cause of GoPro's decline from afar, the company's fall from grace is mysterious in the sense that on paper, none of it adds up. How could a company who had all the right ingredients from the measures of Silicon Valley and Wall Street squander it all in such a short period of time? How could having a market-defining, category-leading product be worth so little? Saturation doesn't happen overnight, so what exactly were the founders and executives up to when the market began to shrink on them? In this episode, we'll cover the rise and fall of GoPro in its three eras, their failures and strategy, and how the company's collapse serves as a crucial reminder on the importance of knowing your market. Between 2010 and 2015, GoPro was in its golden age, a honeymoon era of optimism and prosperity that culminated in a lucrative IPO. While iPhones, Galaxies, and Pixels had all surpassed GoPro in video and picture quality, consumers conceded that smartphones would never match GoPros in toughness and compactness, and the market of people, adventurers, and athletes who needed action cameras looked to be much bigger than anyone had expected. While consumer demand for DSLRs was in decline across nearly all legacy brands, GoPro had been on a tear, shipping more units every year through the early 2010s. This growth was no venture capital trick. Compared to the other tech IPOs in the same period, GoPro uniquely operated in the black. In the company's own words, GoPro was a high growth startup fueled by a flywheel effect, where adoption led to awareness, which then led to sales. In business, you typically have to spend money to make money. To stimulate growth, you must advertise to drive awareness and then run promotions to accelerate purchases. The flywheel effect is a coveted alternative where awareness and adoption reinforces one another organically in an endless loop to the point where growth becomes self-sustained. Early GoPro users were rewarded for their adoption and usage with internet fame. People who didn't know about GoPro were exposed through the viral videos, of which a subset would be inspired enough to buy their own GoPros. New users would then generate their own content, which would then reach even more audiences, encourage greater usage, and inspire further upgrades and purchases amongst new and existing customers alike. The company saved millions in marketing as they didn't need to convince people that GoPro was cool when its users were spreading the gospel for them for free. User-generated content was GoPro's greatest asset. In the 2010s, the majority of GoPro's business came from retail. GoPro sold its lower-end entry-level camera models in big-box retailers like Best Buy, Target, and Walmart to reach the mainstream consumer. Boutique sports and outdoor retailers helped GoPro reach the athletes, adventurers, and hobbyists who had the appetite to spend big on the higher-end models. What was slightly unique was the way that the company used user-generated content as a way to drive in-store differentiation. When you walk into a retail store, every brand on every aisle is fighting for a spot in your shopping basket. For retailers, GoPro went the extra mile to build and install distinct point-of-purchase displays that were as wide as 12 feet, with built-in screens that broadcasted an endless reel of viral user-generated content. If you had somehow never seen GoPro footage before, the company would play some for you to lure you into buying the product. GoPro videos were so new, refreshing, engaging, and exciting that other businesses wanted to get in on some of that virality for themselves, even if they didn't fully understand it. Marriott loaned out GoPros to resort guests and encouraged them to post their videos on social media. LG believed that running GoPro videos on their new 4K televisions would better grab the attention of customers walking by in the store compared to the conventional show reels of nature and sports. And while YouTube was the biggest channel, other media networks jumped on to become official distributors of GoPro content with the hope of adding eyeballs to their platforms. GoPro got its own channel on Xbox, Virgin America Airlines, Roku, Pinterest, Twitter, and partnered with Red Bull, ESPN, Ford, Wimbledon, BMW, and the NHL for content generation. The enthusiasm and appetite for GoPro content gave the company hope that they could make money not just as a camera manufacturer, but also one day as a media empire. GoPro believed it could directly convert views into dollars by licensing user-generated content and producing its own paid original content. Media would be a high-margin supplemental revenue stream that would theoretically feed off the same flywheel that had driven the core hardware business. GoPro went all in pursuit of this future, creating an entertainment division and hiring the flashiest executives from tech and media to lead it. The former CEO of Skype, Tony Bates, the 11-time Emmy-winning former HBO VP Bill McCullough, the former MTV SVP Ocean McAdams, and the former head of original content at Hulu, Charlotte Koh. The entertainment division scaled up to 200 employees who spend their time scouring the internet for user-generated content to license and brainstorming how to expand GoPro from one-off, random, user-generated content into a more traditional, in-house, narrative-driven television series. It's helpful to remember that in the early 2010s, original content was the hottest thing in entertainment. Netflix had just launched House of Cards after seeing Hulu's success, and Amazon fast followed that same year with its own programming. Since original content was so early into production, user-generated content remained the heart of GoPro's marketing, retail, and growth strategies. They had to keep the content factory churning. GoPro regularly ran sweepstakes to incentivize content generation and annually rewarded creators with cold, hard cash. The company focused on simplifying the editing and sharing process so users could create compelling clips quickly and easily. Quote, "We see a future in which GoPro serves as a platform for people to visually express themselves like never before. A future in which their shared experiences and collective content on our platform is as valuable to GoPro as YouTube is to Google or Instagram is to Facebook. We have to enable the capture of great content, then we have to enable the easy management and editing of that content to increase the rate of sharing so that we increase the pool of content that we have." But entertaining millions online through free user-generated content would not pay the bills. GoPro's business would be powered by camera sales for the foreseeable future, even if media and original programming were much sexier topics. Despite the dazzling footage of extreme sports and death-defying stunts, the only way for GoPro to keep up camera sales was to sell to the mainstream masses. The company strongly believed that as long as GoPros were getting easier to use, the total addressable market, or the TAM, would naturally expand from just athletes and adventurers into everyday customers. The product needed to be as simple as possible, and the company perceived the greatest complexity was not in using the device itself, but rather in the post-capture editing process to turn raw footage into entertaining, shareable, view-worthy clips. Quote, "There are concerns that it will be difficult for GoPro to grow beyond our core customer base. We do not believe our challenges include a limited TAM. Our challenge is to make GoPro simple. We're focused on a lot of other things outside of the guy jumping out of the airplane. We like you, keep jumping out of airplanes, but we actually think there's much better uses for GoPro as capture devices. We need to weave GoPro into the consumer's everyday life flow. Take somebody like my wife. She uses a GoPro to capture experiences, but she's not going to hunker down for 3 to 4 hours on a Sunday to offload the video from the camera onto the PC and then edit. As badly as she wants to create that content, there's just no way it would happen. It's not scalable." GoPro is your standard hardware business. It launches a new generation of full-price products every year and discounts the model from the prior year to clear out inventory. Between 2014 and 2015, GoPro launched 6 different cameras and a slew of editing tools in an attempt to simplify the product for the masses. The Hero 4 Black was the highest end model that recorded at 4K for $499. The Hero 4 Silver had weaker video quality but the same display for $399. The Hero 4 Session was a streamlined model at half the size with only 3 buttons but no display at also $399. The Hero Plus LCD was an entry-level model at $299, and the Hero was the most basic, stripped-down, entry-level model with no display or Wi-Fi at $129. The company also teased its entry into the emerging drone and virtual reality markets with a soon-to-be-released $1,000 quadcopter drone and a $5,000 all-in-one rig for recording 360-degree video. Yet just a year after the IPO, there were signs below the surface that the golden age was quickly fading. Revenue had grown from $64 million to $1.6 billion in 5 years from 2010 to 2015. The number of GoPros shipped every year had also quintupled in the same period. But despite shipping a record number of cameras and now catering to the masses, year-over-year revenue growth slowed dramatically from 41% in 2014 to just 16% in 2015. Profitability plummeted as the entertainment division brought on greater overhead and the 6-camera lineup sold below expectations. At first, the company played off the weaker sales as a pricing mistake with the Hero 4 Session. Customers had no interest in buying the Hero 4 Session at $399 when they could just pick up the higher-end Hero 4 Silver that offered a touchscreen display and superior video quality for the exact same price. Sales of the Hero 4 Session only picked up when the company slashed the price down to $199, 4 months after its launch. Quote, "At $199, it's got a lot of people's attention. It's not optimized to be sold at $199, obviously, because that's not what we were originally thinking, so it has challenges from a margin perspective. But on the other side, getting this out is going to be a game changer. I think that a $199 Session is a product that helps us grow the TAM." While every company messes up pricing, GoPro's founder's attempt to spin the situation only revealed his lack of understanding of how markets work. While more people can certainly afford a product when it's sold at $199 versus $399, the total addressable market for action cameras would not change over an adjustment in price, especially for just one specific model. Lowering prices makes products more accessible, but it doesn't increase market size. Whenever Apple increases the price of an iPhone, the total addressable market for smartphones don't shrink. By the same logic, whenever brands discount their products, their TAMs don't magically increase. Markets change dynamically based on macro-level factors like the rate of adoption, business cycles, and changes in consumer behavior. If price was indeed the lever that stimulated Hero 4 Session sales, then GoPro customers were in actuality far more mature than the company believed them to be. If we were to plot where action cameras belonged on the adoption curve in 2015, the unanimous lack of consumer interest in the Hero 4 Session suggests that GoPro was much closer to the undesirable, quote, late majority stage than the compelling early majority. The honeymoon phase of people blindly buying the latest GoPro model at any price point was over. Consumers were no longer so naive, as they knew what they wanted and they based their spend on specific features. As a result, consumers unanimously deemed that the value of a displayless, downsized, reduced resolution GoPro was only worth at best $199 and not the $399 that the company desired. The other problem was that the product lineup was too big. Having 6 different SKUs created confusion and choice overload amongst consumers and retailers alike. The average consumer who had wandered into GoPro and was dazzled by the viral videos found themselves overwhelmed just figuring out which model to buy. Less than a year after their launch, GoPro killed off the Hero, Hero Plus, and Hero Plus LCD products and exited the entry-level market for a $60 million loss. None of these 3 models succeeded in winning over the casual, budget-conscious consumer and was largely only sold as Christmas stocking stuffers. Quote, "We've decided to simplify our product line to a good, better, best offering of the Hero 4 Session, Silver, and Black cameras. When you give the customer too many choices, you confuse them and they often end up buying nothing. Something else we're doing is adjusting our marketing to be more product-centric and to do a better job of communicating the product itself and less about the big visuals that we're known for. As we move into a more mass-market customer, we have to make our value proposition more obvious. Our challenge and our opportunity is to simplify GoPro, and when we achieve that, we think we can significantly reignite the growth that we've been known for over the years." Between 2016 and 2019, GoPro entered its second era, where the company's continued misunderstanding of markets and customers sank the business to massive losses. During the golden age, GoPro had peaked as high as $80 a share. Now, during the second era of doom, the stock nosedived to as low as $8 a share. Investor skepticism turned into pessimism as the company committed blunder after blunder. GoPro's revenue was dependent on selling more cameras every year, and like every hardware vendor, the company needed flashy new products with fresh bells and whistles every year that would attract new customers and encourage existing ones to upgrade. But beyond marginal improvements in recording quality, action cameras were reaching maturity. For a product that small, whatever easy innovation possible had already been wrung out. The annual release cycle made innovation even harder, as ideation, experimentation, and development had to be crammed within 10 months or less in order for features to make it in time for the annual release. With fewer cameras being sold, GoPro aggressively locked software improvements to the latest models and refused to discount the previous year's models to capture every dollar possible. New GoPros in this era received minor enhancements like voice commands so users could tell GoPro to stop and start recording just like Siri, improved performance in low-light conditions, marginally better video stabilization, and updated Wi-Fi cards. The biggest improvements came in data transfer, where the company rolled out cloud capabilities and an SD card reader for smartphones. The latest GoPros would auto-upload photos and videos to GoPro Plus, the company's new cloud subscription service. Yet the Hero 5 and Hero 6 lineup both sold below expectations as customers predictably saw these features as too plain to be worth paying premium launch prices for. Overall revenue dropped by 30% in a single year, from $1.6 billion in 2015 to $1.1 billion in 2016, and continued to regress in following years. GoPro was once again forced to slash prices by $100 on the Hero 5 and Hero 6 cameras just 3 months after their launches just to drive sales. The company looked to other markets to be the answer to their camera woes, and in 2016, GoPro launched Karma, its long-awaited $1,000 drone product. But just how GoPro had created and dominated the action camera market, DJI had done the same with drones. And it was Sony, not GoPro, who provided the camera components for DJI's products. The hard truth was that the GoPro Karma at launch failed to meet the existing product standards set by the incumbent. Karma supported only 18 minutes of flight time, whereas DJI's Phantom boasted 27 minutes and the Mavic 28 minutes. In the air, Karma was limited to ranges of 3 kilometers, while DJI's Phantom and Mavic could go up to 5 to 7 kilometers. And in a straight line, Karma flew 5 to 10 miles per hour slower than the competition. Consumers had little reason to choose Karma when they could pick up an objectively superior drone from DJI for the exact same price. If GoPro's plan was to win market share from DJI, then Karma, in pricing and performance, was not the right drone for the job. Being late to the party is unwise, but arriving with inferior yet equivalently priced products is reckless. Just 2 weeks after its launch, consumers reported that their $1,000 Karmas were losing power mid-flight, falling out of the sky, and crashing to pieces. As more and more users experienced this fatal error and shared footage over the internet, it became clear that GoPro had not done the proper testing and even lacked the engineering expertise to explain what had gone wrong. The company recalled all shipments and took Karma off the shelves to conduct a proper investigation and repair. By the time GoPro relaunched Karma 3 months later in early 2017, the landscape had completely changed. The drone industry had dramatically slowed due to regulation and consolidation. Hype died when it became apparent that drones had little real-world application beyond photography and film. And like the action camera market, the drone market was declining even faster than it had grown. As the money ran dry, the entire drone ecosystem collapsed as smaller manufacturers and software vendors went bankrupt. By 2018, DJI had conquered what little remained of the drone market and left the crumbs for GoPro. Already saddled with a declining camera business, GoPro had no choice but to pull the plug. The company discontinued Karma, laid off the entire aerial division, and conceded that drones had become too niche and too low value of a market to continue competing in. GoPro's drone business, for all the hype and millions invested, had lasted just 10 months. The regression in the camera business, the poor Karma launch, combined with the overhead of the entertainment and drone divisions, put GoPro deep in the red with a massive $400 million loss in 2016. Consumers had binged on GoPro content in the prior era, but now by the late 2010s, viewers were getting tired of action camera footage. The videos were less engaging, less exciting, and more redundant, stale, and predictable. As a result, the company's ventures into original programming and licensing fell apart as consumers didn't see enough value out of GoPro content to justify paying for it in any form. The company gutted its entertainment division, laying off all 200 employees and paying over $30 million in severance just to get all the execs out the door. To reduce annual operating expenses by another $200 million, GoPro cut headcount and outsourced its software development and accounting to Romania and the Philippines. Losses improved over time with the cost cutting, but the company was stuck. The markets that GoPro had bet its future on, in virtual reality, entertainment, and drones, had all turned out to be worthless. The only business that it could really count on was the declining, shrinking action camera, the very same market that the company had created less than a decade ago. Quote, Karma has been the #2 best-selling drone in North America. The problem is that as we look towards developing the second generation of Karma drones, we recognize that to be competitive, the margins were going to continue to be very thin, even at a $1,000 and above price point. It became clear from the data that our customers want a more convenient mobile-connected GoPro far more than they want a drone. Our customers want to buy GoPros from us. Our customers don't want media and entertainment business from us. They don't want professional solutions from us. And they don't really want drones from us. They want better GoPros at attractive prices. By 2018, GoPro had run out of both ideas and credibility. The only answer GoPro could cobble together to potentially resuscitate the fading action camera market was to empower users with once again a better editing experience. The company leaned hard into smartphone apps, where everyday consumers in a few taps could retrieve their GoPro footage from the cloud, clip it, add text, overlay a filter, add music, and share directly to social media. GoPro shamelessly called one of these features Quick Stories, a direct ripoff of Instagram and Snapchat. Predictably, these investments in editing did not alter the market's downward trajectory. Power users laughed off GoPro's mobile apps and continued to use their desktop editors, while the vast majority of consumers remained satisfied with the basic native editing tools and cameras that came with their smartphones. The number of annual GoPro shipments declined from 6 million units in the prior era to just 4 million by 2019. In the face of undeniable decline, GoPro's founder offered up to Wall Street one of the most embarrassing excuses ever made by a public company. It's become clear that our customers are expecting either a significant upgrade every year or a significant discount in the previous year's model, and this group is larger than previously understood. This may seem obvious, but we didn't understand the repeat nature of our customer. We've learned that not everybody is upgrading every year, and that people are in different phases of their upgrade cycle. It's important that we have something to really wow our customers and compel them to update or become a new customer. We also recognize that we can't leave our older products out at its original pricing. That's what really hurt sales when we left our $299 and $399 cameras out for a second year in a row at the same prices. Perhaps more importantly, we don't have any significant direct competition to help us. AT&T has Verizon, and Ford has Chevy, who will take market share from them when they make a product or pricing mistake. In GoPro's case, we have competition, but we don't have a direct competitor to help us benchmark our business. We've had to learn about our market all on our own. I'd like to add that it's important not to confuse a lack of profitability or revenue with a lack of demand. When we lowered prices by $100, we saw a significant uptake in sales, which signifies that demand is good for a GoPro when our products are priced appropriately. It's said that admitting you have a problem is the first step to recovery, but for $1 billion global consumer brand that at this point had been around for nearly 20 years, to admit its own ignorance of the very market it had created is an unbelievably shocking level of incompetence. For years, GoPro had thumbed its nose at its power users while it chased the masses. The company had built and marketed whatever it guessed would appeal to the average consumer. By finally admitting what they didn't know, GoPro was able to reset its product strategy with a new emphasis on listening to its power users. Even though this pool was shrinking, these were at least people with a genuine need for action cameras who didn't mind juggling SD cards, didn't require dumbed-down video editors to get value out of the product, and had been GoPro's most loyal customers. In the final years in the second era of Doom, between 2018 and 2019, GoPro cameras achieved greater leaps of innovation through the simple exercise of building the features that its customers wanted most. Highlights included the hyper-smooth in-camera video stabilization that eliminated the need for gimbals, stronger microphones that performed better underwater or in high winds, a redesigned user interface on the rear touchscreen display, and built-in fingers to eliminate the need for separate mounting frames. By directly building what power users asked for, GoPro benefited with greater sales predictability and stronger sales of the higher-priced high-end models where profit margins were the largest. The Hero 7 and Hero 8 lineups were better received than previous generations, and the collective improved commercial performance stemmed the bleeding in terms of revenue and shipments. When combined with the earlier cost-cutting, GoPro succeeded in narrowing its losses, but the overall market was still on the decline. GoPro is now in its third and present-day era of dead brand walking. From 2020 onwards, the company has devolved into a zombie of a business that has leaned into just about every investment trend in the hopes that Wall Street will look upon the stock more favorably. While retailers had been critical in earlier eras, GoPro now needs to capture every cent. And COVID provided the perfect opportunity and backdrop for GoPro to consolidate its offline business to only the biggest and best performing stores. The company pivoted to direct-to-consumer and encouraged customers to buy direct through GoPro.com, where no money had to be split with a middleman. It's strange because in the first ever modern NBA episode on Casper, D2C companies had flocked to retailers for growth, whereas GoPro is now doing the opposite, fleeing retail to go direct-to-consumer. The retail channel, which historically delivered the lion's share of GoPro sales, is now the minority. Reoccurring revenue and high-margin software services has been all the rage on Wall Street, and GoPro has attempted to reinvent itself as an efficient, subscription-oriented, service-based business. The company has significantly beefed up its subscription offerings in this current era, and regularly crows about its growing subscriber base as a sign of momentum. For just $50 a year, consumers can get discounts on accessories, discounts on the newest GoPros at launch, auto-upload services, unlimited video storage, and even insurance for damaged cameras. Quote, subscription is the financial engine of GoPro. It's now where we make the most money. It's the fastest growing product line we've ever had that adds real value to whoever buys a camera. We're not just hardware anymore. It's now hardware and software, with the software component being very profitable for GoPro. Meanwhile, on the product side, GoPro does appear to be finally thinking about hardware in the right ways. These days, GoPro is taking inspiration from the automobile industry and thinking about its camera as a platform rather than a standalone product built exclusively for action. Car manufacturers leverage an underlying set of common internals and components that they call, quote, car platforms, and they use car platforms to build a variety of different models in a cost-efficient manner. Everything on top of the car platform, like its interior, exterior, and body, can be distinct, whereas everything below within the platform, like the chassis, steering, power engine, and axles, remain the same. A car manufacturer can build an SUV, a sedan, and a hatchback off a single car platform. Along the same lines, GoPro sees its camera as a car platform or a Swiss Army knife that, with some tweaks, can be easily extended to other use cases and repurposed for adjacent markets. Quote, the hero camera is a jack of all trades, but with that comes a lack of specialization that some tip of the spear customers really need or desire, and it also comes with some excess that people don't need. The hero camera ends up being more than what they actually needed or sometimes not enough. We're very focused on identifying what are the particular challenges that people are having. If we make a new camera but base it on the existing hero technology, then we can break the mold in terms of the camera's form and purpose and then deliver for these people. They've indicated that they're willing to pay even more for these types of specialized solutions. GoPro so far has rolled out 2 such models, the first being Bones, designed exclusively for drone use, which was just a super condensed variant of the then flagship Hero 10. The second has been the Creator Edition, which bundles the flagship Hero 12 with a tripod, wireless remote, extended battery, and LED lights to enable out-of-the-box vlogging. It's not difficult to think of other avenues where a repurposed GoPro could have value. Body cams for civilians and security guards, dash cams for everyday driving, all come to mind as markets still in need of such a specialized solution. Despite the clarity and product direction, the reality is that GoPro's core business is still a disaster and something even millions of subscribers paying $50 a year won't change. GoPro grossed $1.09 billion in 2022, which is less than what the company made 8 years ago in 2014, and back then, a dollar was worth far more than it is today. Annual camera shipments have plunged 35% in 5 years, as GoPro ships less than 3 million units a year these days. The only silver lining here is that thanks to the focus on power users, the company has been able to raise prices year after year in order to mitigate the loss in volume. In 2021, GoPro finally reversed its streak of net losses to report a spectacular positive net income of $370 million. But on closer look, the actual net income that year was just $55 million. GoPro had received a massive $281 million tax benefit that year, which inflated the real net income by 4 orders of magnitude. These days, the company nets less than it did nearly 10 years ago. And yet, in the hopes of appeasing Wall Street, GoPro has gathered the funds and announced their intent to buy back $100 million of stock, an amount that, as of writing today, would buy you an entire quarter of the company. There are 3 lessons worth highlighting with GoPro, and the first is that business is about curation, not creation. Business is more listening than prescribing. In a world of finite resources, the real product skill is in curation. Choosing not to do something is just as meaningful as choosing what to do. And in this regard, staying close to the market and keeping yourself within the information flow is critical so you can understand what people are doing, what they want, and if it's really worth building what they say. While the action camera market was and will always be small, GoPro accelerated its own downfall by deviating from reality and trying to predict the future and guess what people would want. GoPro was so eager to invent the uninvented that it went all in so quickly into so many unproven markets without performing the proper due diligence. What is second place in the drone market really worth? Who is actually willing to pay to watch GoPro content? Why is GoPro content actually viral? And why would companies pay to license GoPro content for their own commercial use? As a result of being pulled into so many different directions, the company over time lost touch with its own customer base. Yet the hard truth is that none of the mistakes that GoPro made over its 3 eras were truly that bad. Blunders in pricing, product, and strategy are unavoidable taxes that every startup and every small business pays before it matures. And this is where the second lesson comes in. Pricing too high, releasing too many SKUs, making the wrong bets, and having product flops are all mistakes that every company goes through in its lifetime. No business is perfect, and Apple, Samsung, and Sony have all made these mistakes in their hardware at one point or the other. The problem is not that GoPro made all of these mistakes or they made too many of these mistakes at once, but rather that the company made them for so long and it was only when things hit rock bottom did they realize that it was a mistake. As an example, it took GoPro 9 years to realize it could repurpose its core camera to specialize in other use cases. 9 years is an astonishingly long time for what feels like a textbook response that any company in the world would make when faced with a declining market. And this fundamentally has more to do with leadership culture and attitude than anything else. GoPro is a founder-led company. Just like Kevin Plank in the Under Armour episode, Nick Woodman is the single common ingredient across all three eras of GoPro. While Kevin Plank regularly preached his nonsensical worldview at Under Armour, Nick Woodman, in comparison, was always level-headed and calm. Sure, Nick was guilty of taking the visionary Steve Jobs persona far too literally on stage at GoPro events. He also had a poor understanding of how markets worked, and his bets into drones and entertainment were failures. However, it is conceivable how someone in his position, who is seeing the constant virality of GoPro content and the unflappable excitement over drones, would naturally believe in these markets as viable extensions of a core business. The strangest part about GoPro is the consistent absence of urgency and intensity that you would expect from founder-led companies. Mistakes are regularly downplayed like they're not a big deal, and it feels like Nick shrugs them off like standard business lessons rather than massive blunders that ended up costing employees their jobs and his own company a future. While Nick's net worth has naturally plummeted with the share price, the truth is that his financial well-being is not dependent on GoPro's future. Like all founders, Nick had bagged his riches at IPO. He'd bought a $40 million super yacht, a $20 million ranch, and was the highest paid CEO in America, ahead of even Apple's Tim Cook and Disney's Bob Iger. When GoPro's business and stock collapsed in subsequent years, Nick's net worth declined just as dramatically, but he had already made enough from the IPO alone to last him several lifetimes. Just like with Kevin at Under Armour, it seems that Nick enjoys the spotlight, the fame, and the sense of purpose too much to walk away. The slow pace, the sluggish progress, and Nick's largely casual, nonchalant attitude about everything all give off the impression of a founder who's just going through the motions.
Missed pricing call in Q4 of 2017 has resulted in a phenomenal win for the consumer, and we now have the best $199, $299, and now $399 products that we've ever had in the history of the company.
Early days, we didn't do any consumer research.
But we didn't have the right approach, we didn't have the right skill set, and I think we maybe took on too much too soon, and we would have been better served, I believe, to stay, hindsight's 2020, but to stay very focused on what our core purpose, I believe our core purpose in the world is, which is to help people capture and share experiences that would otherwise be difficult to do. What we found was, and what we've learned ultimately, is that not everybody needs a GoPro. We don't need to make GoPro relevant to everybody to be successful and have a growing and profitable business. We need to recognize that a GoPro is a tool for active doers in the world that are engaged in activities that create use case challenges that can't be solved conveniently with a phone or with a different type of camera.
When you get to a stage where a McFlurry costs more than a single share of your company, it just seems so obvious that $100 million would probably be better spent on new leadership and moonshot projects rather than share buybacks. One characteristic that is often overlooked in leadership is hunger. Do you have that intensity, drive, and determination to achieve greatness? Conversely, if you've accomplished everything you can, what really is there left for you to do? Since Nick has already made his riches and etched his place in history as a successful entrepreneur, it makes no material difference to him whether GoPro now succeeds or fails. In short, what Nick lacks is skin in the game. What GoPro needed back then, and now more so than ever, is a leader who's hungry for success and will fight tooth and nail to turn things around. While Under Armour suffers from a founder who does too much, GoPro suffers from a founder who does too little. A shrinking market is difficult but not impossible to overcome with the right spirit, commitment, and discipline. It really makes you wonder how different things would have turned out for GoPro if its leaders had not been so complacent and had acted with greater urgency before the walls closed in. The last lesson is that it's ultimately workflows that shape markets. For the longest time, GoPro held onto the theory that if they just made editing easier, consumers would flock to buy their cameras. And the company tried a variety of tools over the years to simplify editing. But if we zoom out and we plot out the entire workflow of all the steps a user would need to take to be successful with their GoPro, there are 5 stages: capture, transfer, edit, upload, and share. Editing is certainly one of the most complex steps that requires the most time, effort, knowledge, and skill. But there's an argument to be made here that the very first step in capture is actually the hardest. It's significantly more complex, demanding, and critical to the entire workflow. Action cameras thrive at capturing premeditated physical activities, meaning you have to know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how long it'll last, and who will be involved. And you need to know all these things for lighting and for the best shot. Yet for the vast majority of people in the world who don't regularly participate in noteworthy physical activities or want to do so much mental planning for a single video, they'll fail at the capture stage and never even make it to editing. A better editing experience would not make the capture portion easier, and it would not change the conditions and requirements for an action camera. The fall of GoPro is a powerful contemporary lesson on markets and strategy, as it is a tale about founder-led companies and the dangers of going public. GoPro is a prime example of a company that would have likely enjoyed a much better fate if it had stayed private and operated without the unrealistic demands of infinite growth. But at the same time, if GoPro hadn't IPO'd, then Nick and his investors would not have received their life-changing payouts. While GoPro is still recognized in Silicon Valley and Wall Street as a pioneer, it seems more certain now than ever before that, like many other inventors through history, the company will die a quiet and penniless death.